A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. What's your scariest animal attack experience/story? I'm a vet tech and have seen some bad injuries at work. One girl lost her whole bottom lip once. This one happened to me last year. I was house-sitting/pet dog, sitting for a friend who is a veterinarian. The dog has anxiety and trust issues and also has daily medication he takes. On one of the days I was watching him, I let him out while I prepped his meds and he ran outside. On the way back I noticed he had an accident in the house, but when I bent down to pick it up he came in and charged at me. At first I thought he maybe just had butted me because it felt like I ran into a wall, then my face started bleeding uncontrollably. I had my baby with me that day. She was in the front, but I dropped our car keys when I was running outside. A neighbor saw me and came to help call my fiancé at work and called an ambulance. At the time I hadn't realized I was missing a large part of my nose and had multiple lacerations on my face as well as excessive bleeding literally down the street. I lost all the skin, tissues and fat on 30% to 40% of my nose and am still recovering/getting plastic surgery a year later. I also have damaged cartilage on the left side of my nose and have daily medications and supplements I take to help regrow what I lost before the next surgeries. When I was 3, I was feeding mallard ducks at my cottage, unsupervised. The mallard ducks swam away quickly and about 8 Canadian geese showed up. They kept hissing at me, obviously wanting the bread, and as I turned to walk back on the dock to get away I found a few blocking my path, so in 3-year-old logic I turned back around, to find more blocking my path. As I turned, one came up from behind me and bit me, causing me to scream and cry. My dad runs out and yells for me to jump into the water, so I do and run back to shore. Seconds later I hear a gunshot. My dad had killed the Canadian goose that bit me with buckshot. In Canada, there's a fine to kill these fuckers because they're a protected species. My dad got the fine, and took it to court stating, I was protecting my son from a vicious animal attack, case dismissed and no fine was paid. Now that fucker is stuffed, and sits on a wooden plaque in my cottage, along with the buckshot in a glass case attached to it. TLDR, Canadian goose bit 3-year-old me, dad killed it, disputed fine, and now its stuffed form sits in my cottage. I got attacked by a bear while hunting for deer. I am a small man and the perfect chew toy for large game. It was a black bear and I became a chew toys with a surprise inside. I was on my back and had my arms crossing my face. The bear went for my left arm first. Bit down on it, tore it out of socket, and started licking my arm inside its mouth. Then the bear started sniffing my crotch and thighs. He bit a part of my thigh off. Tore the pockets out of my jeans and walked off. It wanted the trail mix inside my pocket and was licking the trail mix off my arm. I understand Ranger Smith hatred for Yogi Bear on a personal level now. When I was little I used to play with this dog all the time. For some reason one day this dog decided it hated me. It bit my elbow and threw me to the ground, then went for my tummy. I was young and scared and I assume that's part of why I don't remember what happened next. I do remember the doctor telling my mom it looked like it was good I didn't try to get away. The punctures and bruising I had suggested the dog had locked its jaw, and it could have been much worse. In fact it was for a different kid a week later. That kid had to get a couple dozen stitches in his face. Then the dog got put down and young me blamed myself. Today me wonders what turned that dog to such a different behavior. Not me, but my FIL was mauled by a grizzly bear while working in Alaska. The bear scalped him and ripped the face off of the woman he was working with before his other companion was able to scare it off with a shotgun. They all survived, but he has super bad PTSD now. I got attacked by 5 dogs when I was around 12 or 13 and they pinned me to the ground biting at my arms and legs. Luckily they didn't go for the throat. My brother was close by and got them off of me. My uncle got kicked in the nuts by a horse and ended up losing one because of it. He said when he recovered he went and put a shotgun to the horse's nuts but couldn't actually do it. I'm just surprised he was ballsy, enough to get back behind that horse. There's a story I read that happened in BC where a man was attacked by a bear. His nephew was there hunting with this man. As the man was kicking the bear, the nephew raised his rifle to shoot the bear, but accidentally shot his uncle in the foot. I don't remember how exactly it ended, but they scared the bear away and the man survived. We were dog sitting my aunt's Doberman. I used him as a hill for my Barbie to climb up, aka poking him with Barbie feet, and when I got to his neck he attacked me. I was rushed to the hospital, and had 8 staples to holding my skull together. I remember crying, because my favorite Hooters t-shirt got cut off me at the hospital. I was mauled by a German Shepherd when I was around 3 years old. It tore up a good part of my face and we were way out in the boondocks, so it took over an hour to get to the hospital while my mom held a cold towel on the wound. They had to bring in a plastic surgeon to do the procedure and it took over 100 stitches in my face alone. It took months to heal and guess what, I didn't care for dogs much after that. The owners of the dog had liability insurance which settled for a fair amount of money for future surgery. It was bad enough they thought I would be deformed and need surgery down the line. But it had a happy ending. I got over my fear of dogs after a few years, and actually love German Shepherds now. I didn't need any further surgery, so I was able to use the money I received for a couple years of college. Most people don't believe the story until they hear it from my mother. I was in 4th grade when I was riding my scooter to my neighbor's house where my sister was. One house down from my destination, 2 pit bulls who were not leashed or fenced decided they were hungry. They attacked me and gave me wounds on both of my arms and both of my legs. My neighbor decided to come out to make sure I arrived safely, and thankfully she did, because when she saw me being attacked, her scream was loud enough to notify the owners of the dogs, who came out and got them off of me. A van pulled by and took me home, where my father tied some clean rags around my wounds and rushed me to the hospital. I ended up receiving more than around 60 stitches and was incapacitated for the rest of the summer, which sucked because it was the beginning of summer and I played Little League Baseball. It probably wasn't until senior year of high school that I got over the whole incident, but I remember it made me a really emotional and frightened child afterwards. I'm 22, almost 23 now, and don't have a fear of the dogs anymore and can talk about it without getting emotional. Edit. Oh yeah, the scars are always a nice conversation piece, especially in summer when all of them are exposed by shorter clothing. I tell people to not be sorry for mentioning them because I just don't care anymore. I got bit by a snake while on holidays. I'm Irish. We went to Turkey. My parents told me to stop messing around. Luckily my neighbor worked in the field of biology at the university and he said, "Oh. No. Looks real to me," so I had to be brought to the hospital, got rounds of injections, tablets, all that crap. Basically meant I was either sick, drowsy, or both for a couple of weeks. I only thought of it earlier this year. I'm 20, I was like 13/14 at the time, that the bite was 2 lone puncture wounds. That's a poisonous snake. I always thought it was just a grass snake or something, but from posting on Reddit they concluded the likelihood is it was a northern viper. Venomous. My parents were very panicked after it had happened and felt terrible. I will no longer go to get a football that landed in long grass in an unused dumping area/field to get said ball that someone else kicked. I was like 4 to 5. I was attacked by a rooster trained for cockfighting. It was tied to its pen. Why I didn't try to run away, but it all happened so quickly. Eventually my cousin pulled me away while laughing. It left some scratches on my arms. Definitely was the scariest shit I had ever encountered at the time. I live in New Zealand and my family went on holiday and we were in Rotorua for the day. We went to Rainbow Springs, I think, where they had lion cubs inside a cage. You walked into the cage and they were on a platform with pieces of wood as a fence with big enough gaps to pat them through. Anyway, Dad put me on his shoulders and put me up to the hole so I could say hi to the cub when the cub pounced at me, put his claws through the gap, managed to get his head through and tried to bite me. Dad pulled me away and all the Asians in there went crazy. For context, it was literally the last day those lions were on show as they were too big and pretty much weren't cubs anymore. This isn't a serious attack, but I remember we had this wasp nest in my front yard a couple years ago. We normally play football across the street, so it really wasn't an issue. We were just going to ignore the wasp. Then my dumbass friend decides to throw a football at their nest and we all run across the street and we're fine. After like 20 minutes of playing football, I walk back to my house to get a drink, and as soon as I get to the front porch I realize the wasp were still in attack mode. I got cornered by like 5 of them on my porch, lol, so I basically was screwed. I just ran straight through them, they all latched onto me and started stinging. The crazy thing though was that I thought they could only sting once, but nope, I was fucking wrong, they just kept stinging me over and over again while I ran. Eventually smacked them all off, but that shit sucked, especially the one stinging my ankle. I was attacked by a moose trying to break through the front window of my 400 square foot apartment. Sounds hilarious, but moose are fucking aggressive. My psychotic neighbor, legit psychotic, had a caseworker and everything, was feeding it chocolate chip cookies. We lived in a duplex, and when I opened the door, I was startled to see a moose less than a foot from me. I slammed the door, and for an hour, the moose grunted and banged his head against the door and window while I stood huddled with my shotgun, with buckshot. I had no chance, in my kitchen, 10 foot away, all the while, begging 911 to send a goddamn trooper by. It was 1 a.m. No one was available. Eventually he grew bored and moved on to the neighbor's house. I was 8 at my school friend's first communion, which was held in a very beautiful farm. As in most type of events, kids finish eating first and just go play. Me and communion girl wandered off to the stables and see this horse who is just placidly staying whilst eating hay. I get inside the stall, pick up some hay and happily hand it to him. Horse instead ends up biting my arm, hard, ripping a chunk of skin off. You should have seen me, running towards the beautiful white tent in the meadow where all the adults were still eating, screaming bloody murder with blood gushing down everywhere. My brother was attacked by a half-wolf half-German Shepherd mix. The story: it was New Year's Eve and little brother was about 12. Midnight came and off he went to run around the neighborhood with his friend, banging pots and pans and ringing in 1997 in the most obnoxious way he could. About an hour later, his friend comes home and says, "Brother was bit by a dog." Our family all burst out laughing. What a joke, we thought, tell him to stop being a baby and come home. Little did we know what kind of beast had attacked my brother. The friend explained the ambulance was on the scene and we knew immediately that this was very serious. All laughing stopped and off we went to the hospital. He ended up being okay, got about 25 staples in his leg. They ended up having to chop the dog's head off and send it in for rabies testing, and my brother tried to sue, but the family that owned the dog had no money. Today, you can barely see the scar. I've seen bears and mountain lions out in the wilderness many times. Scariest moment though was being charged by a huge moose. I was maybe 100 feet from Mama Moose when she charged. I turned and ran for the gully. I jumped down the steep slope and slipped and slided my way down this steep embankment while Mama Moose stopped at the top and snorted at me, warning me to keep on moving. I got the hell out of there. One time I was sleeping outside, no tent, just sleeping bag on the ground, and I heard some rustling, looked up and it was a small bear wandering into our camp, surely looking for some food that was all stashed away in a bear box. This was in a national park campground. I got turned on my flashlight and got out of my bag and kinda chased him away. He was a small bear .ar. I got bit and shook by a blacktip reef shark off Maeda Point in Okinawa. It was my fault though, we were baiting them with crushed hot dogs and some steak. A handful of them turned up, but this one curious guy, about 6 foot, just wouldn't leave me alone. He kept coming right up to me and even bumped my hip one time. I kept shoving him away but he wouldn't stop. Eventually he came in from above and just glommed onto my shoulder, biting into my dive vest, not my skin. He did that shaking thing, like a dog with a bone, and it was way worse than I thought it would be. Eventually I punched him a few times in the head and he left, didn't come back. Jerk. I had to get a new vest.